Hey everyone, it's Lisa Danforth, and I am here today with the fantastic Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, otherwise known as KBK, Kathy, all of it, mixing it up. Kathleen is going to be talking today about women, money, and power. I am so excited what you have to share today, Kathleen. I can't wait to hear about it. But before we jump in, I'm going to read a little bit about you so people know, why you're here sharing your expertise. So Kathleen is a wealth psychology expert and author, and she's the founder of KBK Wealth Connection. She has more than 2 decades of experience educating professionals and empowering women, couples, and families. Voted one of the top 9 speakers in 2017 by Investment News, Kathleen is the host of Breaking Money Silence podcast and the author of several books, including her latest book, which I absolutely love, Breaking Money Silence: How to Shatter Taboos, Talk More Openly About Finances, and Lead to a Richer Life. You ready to jump in?
I am.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you,
hand it over
Lisa.
to you. Share a little bit more about yourself.
Hand it over to me. So you did the formal introduction. So I am very excited to talk about women, money, and power. It's one of my favorite topics. And today, what I hope people take away is the idea that even though we are incredibly economically powerful as a group, that individually, I think we still need to work, me included, on some of the internal ambivalence we have about being financially literate, being financially powerful. And so let's just take the dialogue wherever it goes, Lisa. And if people want to comment or ask questions, I would love that as well.
I'm going to sort of pull out one thing that you actually just said, that internal ambivalence. Can you just talk a little bit more about that before we sort of dive deep on the other part?
Sure. So just to lay the context, like when I say that we're more economically powerful, when you look at the amount of assets that we control in the United States, it's 11.2 trillion. It's due to increase to about 22 trillion in just 10 years. I've been doing this a long time. It used to be decades. Now I'm like, oh, it's just 10 years from now. We make 85% of the buying decisions. We're going to inherit 70% of the wealth. We're creating businesses at twice the national rate as men. So all of these things collectively are saying, wow, we have a lot of financial power. But I think there's also a lot of financial discrimination. And so some of that is external, and we can get into that in a minute. But some of that actually leads us to feel quite ambivalent about our power, because we're taught by society that, yes, we should be financially literate. Yes, at this point in our lives, we should have a job, at least until we have kids. And then we're told, don't be profit motivated. Don't be greedy. Oh, you're not going to do that for free? Wouldn't you help out this organization? So there's all these mixed messages. And I really think that unless we take time to unpack them, we live with kind of this ambivalence. And ambivalence is just strong feelings either side. So I really want to be financially successful and powerful. And I really don't know if I want to be financially successful and powerful. So it's really unpacking that in the work that I do and figuring out, how to push forward. It's fun.
It's fun. It is such an important topic. Like you said, there's never been a time in history where we have been so economically powerful, but there's still that discrimination. So we need to discern that ambivalence. How do we even start? Because I think often we don't even realize we're ambivalent. It's just sort of the way that we've been taught, the way that society is. How do we start recognizing that?
Well, I'll give you a quick story from this happened to me a couple years ago, and I often share it in a keynote or a workshop that I'm doing, because it really proves that you can run around as this women in wealth expert and still have internal ambivalence about your power. So Lisa happens to know my husband, Brian, but my husband, Brian, is your typical Vermont engineer. The Carhartts, the plaid shirt, the little bit of a beard.
The Subaru.
The Subaru, the mountain bike, you name it, he's got it. And so he runs down the stairs one morning, headed off to work, and he's clearly rushing. And he is wrinkled top to bottom. His Carhartts are wrinkled, his shirt's wrinkled. He looks like a nightmare. And I turned to him and I said, Brian, you got to go back upstairs and iron your clothes. Now, that's the empowered part of me. I'm not going to iron them. You have to iron them. And he goes, I don't have time. I've got to go. And I said, well, what would your boss think of me? And he stopped. I literally said that. And he smiled and he said, repeat what you just said. I said, I don't care if you go to work, wrinkled or not, I am an empowered woman. But this little belief that somehow I'm being judged by my husband's clothes being pressed is a great example of, wait a second, where did that come from? And I'm not an ironer. So so I just thought I thought it was a great example of feeling like we're going to be judged, even though we're really working to be more empowered. And so he's gone wrinkled any day he wants because I'm just practicing feminism, one laundry basket at a time.
Oh, I love that. Okay, that right there is a tweet moment, a Twitter moment for sure. Did you catch it or did Brian catch it?
Brian caught it actually because I said it.
But I didn't know if you caught it before you even said it. Like as it was, you know how something's coming out of your mouth and you're
it was like this split second thing where I started to smile and I went, ooh. So it was somebody kind of just stopping. But since that time, what I've been doing, and I encourage other people to do, is just notice when you're saying something, how does that support being a powerful woman or being a male ally to a powerful woman versus when is that buying into some of these stereotypes or some of these old beliefs? At my niece's college graduation, now this is going back years, I was joking. I said, don't throw like a girl. And then there were 15 or 20, and I was in women's empowerment. And I was just kidding around and 20 minutes about how I was wrong and as a new graduate. And she was right to call me on the carpet. Say, I raised a little empowered niece. But those things come up. And I think the more we notice them and the more we go, oh, I can't believe I just said that. And it happens with gender, it happens with race, it happens with all sorts of different things. That self-awareness, I think, is really key.
I think it's incredibly important. And it really plays into a lot of what I talk about, which is pausing, recognizing what's going on, just sort of stopping and looking at what was the trigger, what is the belief, how is it that we're showing up in a way that isn't in alignment with who we want to be.
Right.
So it's amazing what can happen when we can pause. Can you talk a little bit about how can women assert themselves more in financial situations?
Well, I think first of all, it's becoming more educated. You don't want to get bogged down in the education, but educated about how there are times that women are either consciously or unconsciously discriminated against. So some of it's kind of blatant, that example of going to the car dealership and the car dealership gives you a different offer than they would if you were there with a male counterpart. I mean, we all kind of know that kind of thing, but some of it's more subtle. So women-owned businesses actually will go to banks to get loans and often be discriminated against because you've had that experience, because they go in early in the process. They view risk more holistically than typically male business owners. And so they're seen as not serious about their businesses. And so there's actually a stat. Women-owned businesses or women who go get funding receive 33 less loan approvals, 33% less loan approvals, that's right, than their male counterparts. Now, it's not that the banker is sitting there, man or woman, sitting there saying, oh, I'm going to discriminate. It's that there's these long-held beliefs about what it means to be a business owner, how you should view risk, and when and where you should come in and ask for some funding. So I'm dying to know your story, Lisa. So are you willing to share it?
Well, when I was starting my children's wear company, Bottom Buddies, years and years ago, I remember going into the bank and really having a hard time, and they sent me back and back. And then when I was finally going in to sign for a loan, I mean, I had to jump through way more hoops. I had the finances there. That they handed me a sheet of paper that said, "Dear Sir," and I just said no, that I couldn't answer it because I couldn't fill out the form. Because what happened was, whoops, here's Kat. She's back.
I thought I'd see if you were awake. Sorry, carry on.
All right, we're going to start over.
Your story.
No, I was just saying that it was with the bank. I wanted to go and get a loan for my children's wear company. And I had to jump through so many more hoops than a man would have to, just talking with other people. And I would be given a form that said, "Dear Sir." And I remember, and it was the Chittenden Bank many years ago. And I said, "I'm sorry, I can't sign this." And they were like, "Oh, no, it's, we'll just scribble that." And I said, no, I can't sign this. Yeah. And they actually wound up changing the header.
Good.
It was one of those things. It's just thrown under the carpet because it is just the way that it always has been.
Right.
And it is frustrating.
So that's the part that you can do, though. What you did is exactly what you can do. You can become educated, you can notice when this happens, and you can use your voice and speak up. It could be, and I don't think it's a simple thing. Changing a form in a bank is actually a big thing. So good for them that they were able to do it. Same thing now in terms of gender or in terms of kids. Like, it drives me crazy because I don't have kids, that they always assume that I have a family, but they don't ask about nieces or nephews who are important to me, or the next generation. Or when they say man, woman, other, I'm like, other? Like, it just, so there's a lot of work to be done in terms of being more inclusive, and gender's kind of included in that. So speaking up when you see these situations that don't feel right. And I think the other part is really understanding your relationship with money and your psychology around money, and what strengths you bring and what challenges you bring. Because it's not like any of us are perfect at money. We will never be perfect at money. We're too human. But with women, we often will wait until we feel 100% ready and knowledgeable before we see an advisor, before we hire an accountant, before we, put out our businesses. And that is actually to our detriment because men don't do that. And it actually sets you up to not get the support or the help that you need, because any of us can be financially literate. It's not that complex. You don't need to know everything about finance. You need to know enough to be able to make sure that you have a good financial team, that you're asking and getting paid what you're worth, and that you are moving forward in your personal and professional life the way you need to, or in a secure way.
Yeah, I find a lot of, to sort of add to that, we feel like we have to be educated, 100% know what's going on.
Yeah.
We also have to feel like we have enough of a nest egg that we can invest before we actually invest it.
Well,
and then that gets in the way.
So I have a reaction to that, because I've worked for the last, I don't know, dare I say 20 years with the financial services industry. And I really like a lot of the people I work with. The industry, however, has set it up so many of us, not just women, but many of us feel that if we don't have $1 million, then they don't want to talk to us. And there have been lots of people and advisors who have had this experience where the person goes in and goes, I'd really like some financial help. And they go, how many assets do you have? What's your income? They go, oh, we don't serve you. So it's not even a myth, like, it happens. I think the exciting part for me is that with younger advisors, I'm talking 40 and under, with the changes in the banking system, part of which I've been trying to have my small part in changing it, is that we are starting to see people and say, wait a second, you don't have to have a certain amount of money to need financial advice, to need financial literacy, to need an advisor. And so there are a variety of new services out there, whether it's completely technology, whether it's working with a virtual advisor, or whether it's, working with that traditional advisor. So I do think women tend to have that reaction, like, I don't have enough. But I also think, part of it is the industry has set that up, and we are working. Some of us are working very strongly in the industry to make that a different message, because to be blunt, it's ridiculous that you can't get financial support unless you're rich. Because how do you get rich? You have financial knowledge, you get financial support, and you learn to make your money work for you.
Now, you mentioned a little earlier, it's education that's really going to help us. Do you have some resources that you would recommend for people to investigate, to start looking into, so they can start educating themselves?
Yes. Yeah. I think that when I'm talking about education, it's twofold, right? So I believe that financial literacy is knowledge. So that's, what's an interest rate? How do you pay back a loan? What's compound interest? What are different investments? So there's concrete knowledge. And there's a lot of information out on the website. You could go to something like Jumpstart Financial, which is a bunch of financial literacy resources. There's a great website called Savvy Ladies, which really, savvyladies.org, which really helps women in a variety of transitions in their life become more financially educated. I think there's also something called, it's actually the initials are WIFE, which is interesting. But I think it's Women in Financial Education. I can get that link if anybody's interested. So there's a lot that's out there on the web that's actually pretty good. The part that I think is really key and important, and the work that I do, is around gaining insight and self-awareness into your relationship with money. So it's not just the knowledge, because if it was just learning things, we would all be financially literate. But there's a reason we still aren't financially literate in this country. Part of it is we haven't looked at, oh, I'm a human around money, I have a relationship with money, and I have to really understand my money psychology in order to make money work for me, or in order to take the steps I need to in my business, or in order to have that conversation with my spouse or my elderly parent or my kid or niece or nephew, whoever it might be. So that part around the psychology of money and gaining that self-awareness is really my sweet spot, because I think when we're able to do that, we can change behavior, we can take action. And I'm not saying that knowledge is invaluable, but knowledge without action, it's not going to usually add up for most of us.
It's useless, definitely. So for those who are having a difficult time starting that conversation, and this definitely is your sweet spot, can you give some tips or tools for someone to step up to the table and start talking about it, whether it's with their spouse, with their parents, or with an advisor?
So the conversations might be a little different depending on who you're talking to. One of the things that I always encourage people to do is start with first a conversation with yourself, and then a conversation with whoever you choose. And you want to choose somebody that's least risky, because you want to have the most success. So if you are in a marriage and you fight about money all the time, don't start with that partner. Start with a girlfriend who might be a little bit more open to talking about money, or maybe a sibling or whatever. But the conversation you need to have with yourself is really looking at what's called your money mindset. What are your automatic thoughts and beliefs about money? Where did they come from? How do they serve you? And how do they get in the way? And so simple things like, growing up, my parents taught me X, Y, and Z about money. And really think about, what did you learn from your mom? What did you learn from your dad? What did you learn from other significant caregivers? If you're really looking at negotiation, you want to look at, when I got my first job, did I negotiate my salary? Why or why not? Did I ever, was I ever coached? Was I taught in my family that negotiation was something you do? Was it something that was discouraged? And there's a series of questions. It goes on and on about having that relationship with yourself and really exploring that relationship. I think the next piece, which I think is what you were asking, Lisa, is really being able to have a financial conversation with someone that isn't accusatory, that isn't negative. So often I encourage couples or, adult children and parents to start with, what was one thing you did where you felt financially successful? Could be big or small. And, what did you learn from that? So start with the successes. What worked for you? It could be as simple as, I learned to save as a kid, or, I created a multi-million-dollar company. It doesn't matter the size of that conversation. It's just, it sets it up for being a positive conversation, and one where you're learning what worked for somebody. And I think starting there is much better than starting with, like, what's your debt? And, oh, did you mess up around credit? And, you don't want to start with the negative.
Shame does not work at all.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's we live in a whole society of money shame. And part of that is because we don't talk openly and honestly about money. We think somehow like, oh, Lisa's doing it better than me, or the advisor's doing it better than me. Well, the fact of the matter is we're all struggling around money, and that's okay. Struggling to talk around money, struggling to make money. And even if you're incredibly wealthy, people are struggling about being incredibly wealthy. So everybody, no matter what the dollars and cents, has some sort of struggle, usually around their relationship with money.
I find, at least in my work, and I'd love to hear if you sort of experience the same, that when we struggle with having enough money and we want to do the efforts to start creating more wealth within our life, the focus on the lack actually creates more of what we're trying to avoid. So we get stuck in this vicious cycle of not wanting to ask for help, not feeling like we have enough to invest, not putting ourselves out there big enough because we're not making enough money yet. So we get stuck in this cycle. Can you talk a little bit about that if you experience that with your business as well?
Yeah, so I've experienced that both personally, and I've also experienced that with the women and men that I've coached. So it's really called the scarcity mindset. So really feeling like there's not enough. And Lisa, if you land a business deal, that means you've taken some money away from me. And there's a scarcity mentality. And so what that does, and I agree with you, it totally sets you up to be in there's not enough. And there's a desperation. There's just a totally different feeling to it. and a desperation feeling. And if you are out there and you feel that, I mean, don't beat yourself up. Like I said, I've been there. I was raised with scarcity. I was raised with the nobility of poverty and all sorts of messages, some very positive, but those were really scarcity messages. And when I finally, for myself, and I see this with my clients, was able to say, I need to invest in myself. I need to take a risk. And what's the worst thing that can happen? And so with my business, very early on, the hardest thing I ever had to do was I asked my dad for $10,000 to build a website. And that may not be hard for some of you, but I never asked my parents for any money. I'm an independent little thing. I still am. So that was incredibly hard. So I said to my father, I said, you can gift me the $10,000 because I knew the estate planning laws, or you can do a loan for $10,000 and I will pay you back. And so he decided to gift it to me. That $10,000 set me, I mean, that's not a lot of money, but that set me up to be able to do a website, to get out there professionally. And it is the beginning of how my business started to take off. I had to make other decisions like that, like when to hire someone. I have a whole team. It's not just me. I mean, I'm the one who's sitting here and gets all the glory, but the team behind me is really the key to my success. And so that's also saying I'm going to invest and have these people around me and live in abundance, knowing the work's going to come. It got a little challenging during the pandemic, but I'm happy to report I hung in there and believed in abundance, and things are picking up. So hopefully I answered your question there.
You did mostly.
Mostly. So tell me the part I didn't answer.
It's just more, I see that we get stuck in this cycle. It's not that we have a scarcity mindset. It's that if you get a contract and I don't, then, I go into the scarcity. It's more that the fear of not knowing enough, not having enough stops us from getting into action of actually creating more of what we want so that we can feel comfortable.
See, I think they're the same thing. I think we're talking about the same thing. I mean, we probably approach it differently because we have a different focus in terms of our coaching or our speaking or training. But I think that money always represents all this other stuff. So if we feel,
it's energy,
so if we feel like we don't have enough or there's not enough money to go around and we're a business owner, that's going to impact how I network with you. That's going to impact what risks I take in my business. That's going to make me say, oh, I don't want to set too big of a fee because I might not get it. It's all those things. So I think it's may start or end with money, but it's about all that other stuff, which is what makes money psychology, at least to me, interesting.
I do see so many people, and I have certainly done this and still get tripped up on occasion of having our self-worth be fully connected to our net worth and not feeling like we've got the ability to step out of it. What I heard you say when you were talking about your dad and asking for that money, because it's not easy to ask for money, especially if it's sort of who you've always been.
Yeah.
But you were vulnerable. You decided that it was more important for you to get uncomfortable to ask for what you needed. What's the worst that can happen? He's going to say no. And what happened? He said yes. And now look, you've got this amazing team. You're traveling all over the world, speaking on all of these amazing, impactful topics.
Yes. And, I also, yes, I had to be vulnerable. My dad usually says yes. So I don't want to present it as too big of a risk. It was a personal risk because it's a pride thing for me. Right. But it's also being a business owner and realizing, okay, suppose dad did say no. I believed so much in what I was doing and felt really passionate about it and knew that it was part of my life purpose. I mean, that sounds so grandiose, but that I am resilient. So when I get a no, I'm bummed out for a day, but I figure it out. And so I think it's some of the work that you do around being very clear on your purpose, being aligned with your values, and then also understanding your relationship with money. And when those two come together, you can really claim your financial power. And it's more than just like investments and dollars and cents. It's really just stepping in to saying, this is the life I want to lead. And it's not like I believe richer is better. That's not the case. It's really about What does abundance mean to you? What is wealth? My word is more wealth. Like, what does wealth mean to you? And for me, it's being able to run my business, go mountain biking in the middle of the day if I want to, go kayaking on the weekends with my husband, and work really, really hard. And sometimes, blow off work so I can go skiing. So for me, that's my definition of wealth. But yours out there, people listening might be very different.
It is all internal. And what you were saying before of when we know what our purpose is, when we truly are able to get anchored in and allow ourselves to get anchored in it, we can ask for more. We can ask for that client. We can ask for that proposal, and we can put ourselves out there, and we can build the abundance that we want, the wealth that we want within our life.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I just want to be clear about is you will still be afraid. But that's okay.
Yes. Good call. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Like every time you try something new, and if you are, a millennial, or you are someone like myself, a really, really old Gen Xer, that there is this life process, not by much. There is this life process, and it's just the challenges are different, and you still have to face the fear. I think you just have a lot more experiences of, I can get through this. And I know for me, having a really good support team, both in terms of male allies and great girlfriends and colleagues, really makes a huge difference too.
Excellent. I want to ask you about a quote that you said, fighting against paying too much for your gender. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that just tripped me up when I was like, wow, that's big.
Well, I've always felt from an early age that it's really wrong that because we are women, that retail prices are different, that our healthcare costs more, that we're paid less.
Our haircuts are more.
Everything's more.
My haircut's more. Look,
And so, I also want to appreciate there were two white women of fair privilege. So there's also women of color who have greater discrimination and a higher hill to climb. But if you look at, I'll give you the retail example, like you're saying the haircut. I often think, one day I was in Kohl's, and so this department store, you're in Kohl's, I grab a white t-shirt, plain white t-shirt. What is this? V-neck. V-neck from my department, and it is like $19.99. I run over to the male department and grab a white t-shirt, pretty much identical, and $9.99. I'm like, so why am I paying $10 more? So you do get to decide, do I go and I just shop in the male's department? But that's wrong. And that happens all over the place. In fact, there's some legislation in some states that actually makes it illegal to charge a woman more than a man for a haircut. I believe it's New York City has a law that you can't charge more for a man's haircut than a woman's.
That I have never heard of.
Yeah. Dry cleaning, another big one. I have had a great conversation with my dry cleaner when I used to live in Massachusetts about the unfair pricing for my husband's shirts versus my shirts, because our buttons are on opposite sides. And so the excuse, and I loved this dry cleaner. I know that sounds really weird, but we had a great relationship. And we'd go back and forth, and he would just say in his broken English that it was because the machines were set for the man's shirts. So they had to do some extra process for women. And I would always argue
women because
the machine. Yeah. And I was like, make a new machine. And he'd just laugh. Yeah. So don't get me going. There's a lot of reasons we pay for our gender, and it needs to end.
Okay. That one blows my mind. Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. So I noticed we're coming up on the half an hour, believe it or not. So is there any questions that I did not ask you that you would have asked yourself that you want to share about women, power, and money today?
I mean, I think, I don't know if there's any particular questions. I think if you are out there and you are feeling like this is hitting home for you, whether you are powerful and you say, I want to do more to role model, or whether you're feeling as if, I wish I could embrace my financial power a little bit more. I would love for people to check out the resources I have on my website on breakingmoneysilence.com. Listen to the podcast by the same name, Breaking Money Silence. And also check out, I have a new course on negotiating and the psychology of negotiating. So that is on my website. So breakingmoneysilence.com/negotiating. And just know that, it takes a village. So each and every one of us, no matter where we are in this process, we need to keep using our voice, speaking up, and together we can all get to a place where we embrace our power, no matter what our gender is.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Kathleen also does a LinkedIn Live every week. And when is that? It's 9 o'clock on which morning?
9 a.m. every Tuesday morning. I usually have my cup of coffee, and it's only 15 minutes. And so I share a tip. I answer audience questions, and I just have a good time on a Tuesday morning. So definitely tune in.
You do look like you're having a great time on that. So if you have any negotiation questions, if there's anything that you want to ping Kathleen about, definitely jump on Tuesday morning, East Coast time at 9 a.m. Ask your questions. And Kathleen, thank you so much for showing up, sharing your brilliance, sharing all of your information and your experience so that others can be empowered and really start breaking money silence. So
thank you, Lisa. Always fun to chat with another powerful woman.
Thank you so much, everyone. To your success, whatever that success is.
I'll drink to that.
For you.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks.